are expected are not actually happening, and the demand that actually even to where they are selling, the market is still not stable. So all these things brought together is making the manufacturing sector very volatile with a lot of taxes. One of us has already talked about the issue of bread, which bread, if I can be able to classify it, falls under manufacturing. So if a benefit has been given by government, or a subsidy has been given to government, to a sector, for them to transfer the benefit to the common mwananchi, then who monitors that to ensure that that benefit has actually reached the common mwananchi? So it's a disrupted kind of a sector as we speak. And it is impossible, almost impossible, for it to continue operating sustainably with the kind of taxes that have been imposed in the last few years. I'm not even going to mention the issue of power bills if we compare to the region. And that's why we see that most of the sectors, most of the multinationals are moving to other countries, in the region or around us. Why? Because we are becoming too expensive. We are not accommodative. And some of these things, I think the government should listen. It's not about taxing. It is about having a sustainable taxation plan that is going to favor everyone and taking into consideration of the haves, the have-nots, and the sectors that are more that are really benefiting from the common mwananchi and from the government at large. It's a whole balance. But at the same time, Chacha, before I give it back to you, how are we balancing also the government bodies in terms of the treasury, what the treasury is doing? How do we balance how KRA is implementing its plan in terms of collection? Because we can have when the left hand is not speaking to the right hand, then we have a disrupted country more than something bringing the country together. And this is the best time to bring at least the country together cohesively for the manifesto that this government, especially the Kenya Kwanza government, promised its people. I think that is very, very key or very important at this point in time, Chacha.
Honorable Tomo Dege, what are the dangers are we staring at by the Finance Committee not incorporating the views of Kenyans, through, of course, the report that they'll table in Parliament next week, Tuesday?
First, I want to congratulate our media fraternity, because when you look at the coverage we have been given so far and the information they have impacted on Kenyans, has put Kenya as a country on limelight, and everybody's looking at the government. And I can tell you for free, if if we affect the cost of bread, we affect the cost of this motor vehicle, what, all Kenyans will say it's pointless conducting public participation, and it will impact on the political side of the government, because Kenyans will say they are not respected. So what has come out is a test for the government, because everybody is aware the whole country rejected some articles in the finance bill, and they are waiting to see if at all their views were taken. If their views are not taken, they'll not respect any other call for public participation, and they'll impact their anger on the government. And it might not end very soon. And I can tell you for free, if the government fails to listen to Kenyans this time round, they'll not sit pretty, but they'll find it very hot.
Should we expect demonstrations as you wind up?
Demonstration is the available option now, and some of us will lead it. And we know how to do it. So Kenyans outside there, the message I'm giving, if your views are not respected, we will stand with you and will lead you in any measure you want from us as your leaders. And the most possible one, the streets.
There is a conversation that this time round Baba is not vocal. Raila Odinga is not vocal on this matter.
He's having his soldiers. I'm one of them. I'm seated here. And we are ready. We can still step in and continue with the battle.
Well, Honorable Lotte, as you end up, of course, the conversation on the 2024-2025 budget.
Well, I think Article 37 of the Constitution is live, and that people are allowed to picket, people are allowed to express their frustrations, they are allowed to express their aspirations through the streets. And the reason why that was allowed was when it was thought that some of the decisions that are made by government might not be to the interest of the public. And so the reason why that, that vent was allowed. And so I will not say that people can go to demonstrate or people cannot go and demonstrate. The only thing I will continue to say is that the advisors to the president, the financial economic advisors to the president needs to know that there is a big lacuna in this country. There is a big opportunity for us to raise revenue than going to tax people. And I'll say it again, levies and penalties. If we actually implement levies and penalties in the right way, we will be able to raise 1 trillion shillings that is going to go to the budget that comes from lawbreakers, so that those that do not want to break the law are not supposed to be punished by high taxes. If today I walk to the streets out here, I'll find matatus driving on the shoulders of the road. I'll find matatus that are breaking the law. I'll find high-end lorries, those that are transporting. You'll find individuals breaking traffic lights and all the laws that are put. Just on transport alone, we can raise 1 trillion shillings. So I will ask government and the advisors of government that as we raise taxes, which is important, as we raise revenue, which is important for the development of this country, let us not just go only to taxes. Let us try to diversify. And I'll say there is an opportunity, I'll let them know, there's an opportunity on lawbreakers in this country. If we just structure that very well, I promise the government that they will raise 1 trillion shillings from lawbreakers, and we can move on as a country without punishing people with taxes.
Well, thank you so much, Honorable Titus Zalote. He is the Kacheliba Member of Parliament, and as well Honorable Tom Odege, Nyatike Member of Parliament, and Robert Basil, who left a few minutes ago, the other Member of Parliament, who have joined this conversation this morning. Of course, as we continue to unpack President William Ruto's 4 trillion budget, which is the second budget. Remember, you can also join in this conversation via social media platforms at K24 TV, at Joel Chacha, and as well on our SMS and WhatsApp numbers on the bottom of your screens. Of course, I'll be sampling your feedback as they stream in, and we expand this conversation to also rope in several members of parliament and also Kenyans. And now, let's get the bite of the Navaholo Member of Parliament, Honorable Emmanuel Wangwe, on the budget 2024-2025.
Is to appreciate that a finance bill cannot be good for everyone. It is selective. My interest to the people, from the people of Navaholo, is totally different from from other communities. My people have said, go to parliament and legislate on our behalf. And one of the issues that is affecting my people is the introduction of VAT on transportation of sugarcane. That is the key element that my people have felt I must defend. I must put an amendment. It's my duty. I will not run away from the floor. I'll be on the floor to face the Committee on Finance, explain to them and my colleagues that introduction of VAT on transportation of cane will affect my people. Therefore, what happens is, yes, it will help everyone at the end of the day. But what affects my people today, as we sit in this house, is the issue of transportation of cane as it is. There is no harm in putting other taxes. We will continue to pay taxes. After all, government can only make money from taxes. But introduction of such a tax at such a time, when the president has just given a relief of money to the factories, he has just introduced on Madaraka Day, he gave the farmers 600 million to get good seeds, meaning we are going to have better cane than ever before. So we cannot say we introduce now the tax on transportation. Instead, what we say, what I would feel is, let us first get the reprieve from the government, and then the next financial year, you can gradually introduce taxes on transportation of cane. So it's a matter of we will have to share and we will have to defend that position. Otherwise, for me, where I stand, we must have a finance bill. Anyway, it has to be there. But what now offends us is the introduction of such a kind of a tax to us. Otherwise, for me, I feel we must move forward as a country.
Let's also hear what the Kitui Rural Member of Parliament, Honorable David Mboni, has to say on the budget 2024-2025. By the way, he's also a member of the Finance and National Planning Committee, which has now retreated to prepare a report on the Finance Bill 2024.
By March, that first March of this year, we had a shortfall of 270 billion of target from KRA, the revenue which could not correct. And you see, you remember, this current act, which is the last finance bill, which is the now current act, we are supposed to raise 214 billion. Now we have a shortfall of 270. That means for the last 9 months, we have been losing, we are not being able to collect 30 billion. So at the end of the financial year, we are going to have a deficit of 300 billion, which is quite substantial. This finance bill, the current one, we are supposed to raise 302 billion, which I feel we may not be able to achieve, because the 4 billion budget, we have a deficit of 600 billion, which we are supposed to finance either borrow locally or internationally. And from the look of things and the way things are moving, we may not be able to achieve that target.
Remember, on this special coverage, we're getting as many voices as possible. Also, shortly, my colleague Linda Koskei will be joining us live from Parliament, of course, just to bring us more details from the ground, where the Treasury Cabinet Secretary, Professor Njuguna Ndung'u, is expected to actually be tabling or reading the budget in the afternoon session. And right now, I'm joined by the second set of guests. That is Honorable Gabriel Kagombe. He is the Gatundu South Member of Parliament. Thank you so much for getting time this morning. And as well, Honorable Nabi Nabwera, who is the Lugari Member of Parliament, also a member of the Education Committee in the National Assembly. Thank you so much for getting time. Honorable Geoffrey Ruku will be joining us shortly. He is the Mbeere North Member of Parliament, and Ruth Kinyanjui is still with us live from the US. She is an economist. Now to Honorable Nabi Nabwera. 4 trillion Kenya shillings is the budget for the next fiscal year. What do you make of it?
Very ambitious. Our budget is very ambitious, especially given the circumstances under which we are operating. Now that we are going to close the year with a shortfall of over 300 billion, we could be going into creating more debt by this budget. From where I sit, that budget also means to raise the money to finance that budget. If we are not sensitive, we can easily go into a downturn. Why? Because that means if you are to finance that budget in the manner suggested in the finance bill, you are asking many more people who are already overburdened to pay for it. Now, that is not even my concern. My concern about this budget is, are we putting money in the right sectors? For example, the education sector. You require quite a bit of money. We are still short of almost 50 billion to be able to sort out the JSS issue, to be able to sort out the new university funding model. But that's not where we are putting the money. Actually, the money in the education sector, whereas we expected it by nature of it being the driver of the economy and by nature of it guaranteeing a futuristic state, we have not put in the required money for what the Education Committee had requested. Instead, the money, a lot of money has gone into security, which to me, we would save some money there and put in education. We would save some money there, put in healthcare, which we are changing the model again, and again it has a shortfall. So it is a question of the getting it right, and that really concerns me.
Well,
yes.
Honorable, of course, Gigi Kagombe, your opening remarks as far as the 2024-2025 budget is concerned, it's President William Ruto's second budget. It has now crossed a record high 4 trillion mark to stand at 4.006 trillion Kenya shillings. What do you make of it?
First of all, I must say that the budget estimates in this country and in every other country keep soaring. The figures keep going higher and higher as a lot of things happen. First is that we have a progressive population, both in the country and in many democracies. So every time we get budgets, and all the time, because we've gotten used to, if you start funding a certain service, for example, the way we started funding free primary education, we cannot backtrack on it. So every other government funds more services than its previous government or than the previous year. So it is not unusual for these figures to keep soaring. You remember Moi's last budget was probably slightly above 350 or thereabout billion. And we're able to raise about 270 billion at that time, which is now in maybe 22 years. So you realize we have moved more than tenfold of the budget that we did 22 years ago. So what this means is that the figures will keep growing, whether this is the Ruto government or it is any other government. Even in the next dispensation, when we change the governments, still the figures will keep soaring because our population keeps growing and our interest and our expectation of the government as a people keeps growing. So what we need to ask is, we have opened more economic space. So how do we service it? How do we service the infrastructure that we have spent money on? How do we service? We opened Thika Road. So it will ask for more money to maintain it. We are doing the Mau Summit, Nairobi Mau Summit Road, Limuru Mau Summit Road. We will expect more money to service that road. We are doing opening of the expressway to Mombasa. We will be expected in the future to keep giving more money to service those infrastructure that we spent, that infrastructure that we spent money on. So what I think, even without looking at the figures, because we'll get a chance to come at it, and I'm just looking at the bigger picture and the top line image for now, is that this is not a decision of the Kenya Kwanza administration or Ruto administration. It's a decision that you can already foretell. Whoever will be president in 2032, you can tell where the figures will be, whether there will be, I mean, you know, without, there will be a parliament. So you can already tell where the figures will be. The figures will not be 4 trillion. At that time, in another 10, 8 years, it will be 6 trillion or going higher. So the point is, do we have the requisite fiscal policy to ensure that our people, do we have the requisite fiscal policy that is not knee-jerk, to ensure that we have enough ways and good ways of financing this side of expenditure? Do we have enough side, do we have requisite policy to support raising of revenue without people keeping complaining? Because this is our responsibility. Our responsibility of funding the budget is a sacred responsibility that we have as a people of Kenya. Well, so what we need to ask is, do we have proper policy that will make people pay taxes without always having to sit here and say, now, you know, this budget, because now it sounds, every time we talk about the budget, it sounds like it's something new that came with this administration. Yet, budget has been read since even before we got independence. Well, let's now get... So it's just the infrastructure that we need to look at in terms of...
Let's now get the views from experts, and now we're joined live by my colleague, that is Linda Koskei, in fact, our business journalist. Live from Parliament, where the Treasury Cabinet Secretary, Professor Njuguna Ndung'u, will be tabling or reading the budget in the afternoon session. Linda, good morning. How is the situation, like preparation, security-wise, and who do you have on set? And let's get their views on the 2024-2025 budget.
A very good morning to you, Chacha. And we've pitched camp here in Parliament building and awaiting the Treasury to table the 2024-2025 budgets. And with me, I have a team of experts just to dissect the budgets before the official reading by Treasury. But before that, right here in Parliament, it's quite busy, a beehive of activity. We're seeing legislatures already streaming in and waiting to debate the finance bill as well as waiting for the reading of the budget by Treasury. And just allow me, Chacha, to introduce my panelist here. With me from my right is Gideon Rotich. Gideon Rotich is a seasoned tax law and policy expert and associate director as well. And on the other side, we have Job Wanjoy, a friend to this panel, because we were with you just the other night, had insightful discussions with him from Kenya Association of Manufacturers. And before we dive deep into it, let's just get from them an overview of the understanding of what will be happening today truly. Perhaps we can start with you, Gideon, your expectations today, and just to give us an overview of what you expect.
Thank you so much, and thanks for having me here. Yeah, it's that day that really happens once in a year for the National Treasury.
Yeah.
My expectations, and I believe together with the majority of Kenyans, is looking at policy measures that will spur economic growth. Currently, when you look at the current business environment, perhaps we're in a constrained economy, so a majority of the people will be looking at what are the policies that the government is putting into place, just to ensure that the economy grows. But then, hand in hand with that one is the finance bill. Looking at the recently published finance bill that has undertaken public participation, one key thing that really comes out is vis-a-vis the budget is domestic revenue mobilization. So even as we are looking at the CS of the National Treasury releasing the budget, what we also so keen on is in terms of the domestic revenue mobilization. So what are the key measures that again the government is going to put in place other than the provisions that are contained in the finance bill? So some of the provisions in the finance bill are already out there. It's been matter of public debate, but we can still deep dive into them. Those are mentioned.
Yes, we'll be speaking about the key measures and fiscal policies in place. Perhaps you can just speak your thoughts on that as well, Job. As we wait for the tabling of the budget, what is on top of your mind right now?
Thank you, Linda. At the top of my mind, I'm looking at how we can have further government consolidation of the expenditure, rather than the way we have been having review of the budget midway. Like now, this year, we have reviewed it twice. Looking at how we can have a budget that is close to the actual, but it's still ambitious, because we cannot work with a budget that is not ambitious. So we are hearing that the budget is likely to be in the region of 4.7 trillion shillings. That is inclusive of the debt payment. As far as the private sector growth is concerned, we are looking at how incentives will come through this budget, so that the private sector growth can continue. And it is in this that we'll be able to get the much needed jobs, the much needed investments.
But before you even go deeper into that, you've talked about incentives, and from the manufacturing sector, which incentives have you identified so far? Because I see most of the incentives have been dropped, including even in the tourism industry.
We have seen, like now the government really looking at the tax expenditure, and that's why some of those exemptions have been dropped. For instance, we have seen the government moving from the zero-rated and the standard rate to exemption status. But on some products, like now the inputs that are used in making the agricultural pest control products, I think this one we should see the government providing incentives, because agriculture is one of the main pillars that is driving this economy. If we move from there, looking at how we can see also incentives in terms of, like now the bread. There has been a heavy debate around the 16% introduction on VAT. How can this again be dropped? We are also interested to see incentives around, like now, the plants and machineries that are normally used for production in our factories. We have what is called the Chapter 84 and Chapter 85, where we have various industrial machineries and spare parts. Currently, they attract the 16% VAT. We want to see government reconsideration, because we have not seen that in the Finance Bill 2024, and time is still not lost. If this can be mentioned, at least we will be happy. And then, as far as alignment of these incentives with what we have at the EAC level. At the EAC level, we have what is called the Common External Tariff. whereby the raw materials attract zero duty. Then intermediate products that are not locally available, 10%. And then intermediate products that are locally available in abundance, 25%. And what is finished, imported, attract that 5% because we have abundance production in the country.
But even with those
Yes.
the tariffs in place, has the government been really putting this into consideration?
That's what I was moving to. We want to see anything that is in form of a raw material.
Yeah.
We see reduction in terms of the domestic taxes that are charged on it. Even if we can have staggered VAT rate, just like what is proposed in the national taxation policy, whereby the raw materials can attract lower VAT, and the finished product can attract the the standard rate of the VAT.
Yeah.
That's another major incentive that can be provided to the private sector and specifically to the manufacturing sector, so that we can spur the value addition in the country.
Yeah. And before I come to you, Gideon, let me just also get to know your what you think about the excise tax that has been placed, not even in bread, not even in edible oil. Which one really comes out prominently for you? Because there are a lot of excise tax and levies in the manufacturing industry. Which one really makes you feel like, no, this one will not pass?
We have, like now, the excise duty imposition on some of the products of which they're normally viewed like they're sinful in nature. So it's called a sin tax, and then it's imposed on them. The problem we have been having on this is that our excess duty rate in the country, compared to Uganda and Tanzania, it's much lower. So you'll find if someone wants to take a bottle of pombe, or you want to take a cigar from Tanzania and Uganda, it's much more cheaper, and this is quite prevalent at the border point. And then the other thing also that has happened, you find that the illicit trade is growing because of higher excise duty in the country, as opposed to some of these other countries. Or you may find someone has taken a bottle of beer in Uganda, they can stagger back into the country. But when they do that, that's a loss in terms of our investment. That's a loss in terms of revenues for the country. Over and above that, we have some other excise duties like now on the plastic product that has been introduced under the Finance Bill 2024. We have been calling for the government to drop that because we have multiple excise of fees and charges and administrative fees and charges that are being charged on some of these products, be it plastic, be it water. You move to the confectionaries. I mean, other products that you find that excess duty is being imposed on, which has pushed the cost of consumption a bit higher and reducing down of the consumption base.
Yes, and we'll also speak about the ripple effects of what this really means to a common mwananchi. But let me come to you, Gideon, in terms of the revenue collection vis-a-vis the expenditure, from where you see it from a tax perspective. Do you think the government is on the right track?
So, first thing I want to say is we've come far as a country. So, the government is putting in place various measures to ensure that the revenue is well mobilized. So, looking at the current state of the economy and really the measures that the government is putting in place, maybe I want to mention around 4 of them. So the first one is the finance bill that I did mention earlier. So quite a number of issues and quite a number of taxes that the government intends to raise. Wanjohi has mentioned quite a number. And there is, in addition to what he mentioned from a manufacturing perspective, there are things to do with the eco levy. Yes, we do want to, from a green perspective, from a climate change perspective, there is need to ensure that we are going green. Kenya is over 90% renewable energy sources. But then when you critically look at that, what is the impact of that eco levy on items such as the manufacturing? So will there be an increase in terms of manufacturing costs to the manufacturers? So I think those are some of the areas that we critically need to look at. The other areas that the government, again, seem to be critically looking at is recently the national tax policy has been enacted and ratified by the Departmental Committee of Parliament. Again, there was the medium-term revenue strategy. Looking at this revenue strategy, you are looking into the future. They're looking into currently all the way until 2027. What are these measures that the government is going to put in place to ensure that revenue is mobilized? Then the other one is, I will call it the non-tax revenue. There's really been, what we've seen government do in the recent past is through the MDS. So those are the ministries, departments, and state agencies. They're also introducing certain levies, certain levies, and increasing such levies. So an example maybe that I want to give is when the finance bill was tabled, the Agriculture and Food Authority also published certain rates for import. So there was additional levies. So again, looking at some of these ministries, introducing other levies. So what the government is trying also to do is, other than the core tax revenue, there are also other additional revenue that can be mobilized.
And do you find this finance bill as super ambitious?
I will call it super ambitious at the present. As I mentioned, we still have a long walk to go. So ideally, for me, a proper tax policy is one that doesn't really weaken demand, but one that spurs production.
But do we have a proper tax policy? Like you've said, a proper tax policy needs to do this and this and that. How is Kenya's tax regime and policies in place?
Yeah, so in terms of the tax policy, again, I would say we've really come from far. We now have the first national tax policy enacted recently, last month, published on 30th of May. So ever since independence, we've never had a national tax policy. So what does the policy entail? One of the key tenets of that policy is to do with certainty. What we've been asking government to do is, manufacturers want certainty. The businesses want certainty. By the time you are doing your planning for the next 5 years, you need to be very certain. Not maybe in the next 2 years, there's a certain tax that is being introduced.
But truly, the question majorly is whether our government or the tax policies in place is predictable, because many businesses would want to know, would want to predict the taxes beforehand. But we'll continue with that conversation. Let's just get to hear what's happening on the other side. Chacha, what's happening on that side, and what are your people saying?
That's our very own Linda Koske, who is live for us in Parliament Billings. Of course, we'll be getting back to her shortly. And in studio right now, we are joined by Honorable, of course, Geoffrey Ruku, who is the Mbere North Member of Parliament. Thank you so much for getting time. And we're actually focusing on this 4 trillion budget, President William Ruto's second budget, that has crossed the 4 trillion mark. And, of course, there is a fiscal deficit of 609 billion Kenya shillings. That is 3.38% of the GDP. Honorable Ruku, even as we have this fiscal deficit of 609, of course, it's less than what we have currently of 908 billion, according to Supplementary 2. Is it a figure that is there just for the books, but will end up expanding it due to revenue shortfalls? 2.9 trillion as the revenue target, is it attainable? Your opening remarks.
Yes, it is attainable, Chacha. We can be able even to get more than that if our people at the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, as well as the technocrat within the Ministry of Treasury, are able to put their act in order. We have seen from the time Kenya became independent, using the same formula, the same method of taxing the same thing year in, year out, without focusing on expanding the tax base. And when I mean the tax base, is there are so many micro businesses or income generating activities across the nation which are not within the tax bracket. And it's upon those who are given the responsibility in Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, as well as Treasury, to synchronize their effort in bringing every income generating sector to this national generating, to tax base. That's what I mean. So we need to see Treasury technocrats doing more than what they have been doing. I'm becoming a bit uncomfortable with the kind of work the technocrats in the ministry, in the Treasury, have been doing, because we as members of Parliament who are seated here, we are privy to quite a number of information. We sit in a position of privilege, and we can be able to have a bad eye view of some of these issues. And I have come to conclusion that Treasury technocrats are not doing enough. I have come to conclusion that the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics are not giving the actual statistics of our economy. They need to go out of their way. We can be able to correct more than 2.9 trillion as a nation.
Well,
but this issue of taxing water, taxing beer, taxing cigarette, year in, year out, yes, let's see it continue, but also let's see new areas, new spaces where Kenya can be able to generate income. And we have so many of them. And also, I got to see Minister of Transport the other day. I don't know whether it is true or not. I saw it in social media, that saying we are going to increase the fuel levy so that we may be able to collect more taxes. I'm a bit disappointed. Because as a minister in charge of transport, he should be telling Kenyans whether he's coming up with a new traffic management act system, which can help the nation to collect even more taxes without penalizing Kenyans.
Well, allow me to
we need to be more proactive, Chacha.
Well,
it is true. I support the government 100%. I support William Ruto 100%. But those who are given job by the president, those who are given job in senior position, they have to work hard for the people of Kenya.
We take a short commercial break. When we come back, I'll be sampling some of your views and getting more, of course, perspectives from the guests in studio, and as well Ruth Kinyanjui, who is live from US, of course, virtually. But at this juncture, we take a short commercial break. Keep your views streaming in. Of course, I'll be sampling some of them as far as the 2024-2025 budget is concerned. We take a short commercial break. Stay tuned.